I never get used to the cold. Not really. Even through layers of specialized gear, it finds a way to remind you that humans don't belong here. Antarctica doesn't care about your technology or your training. You're just a visitor, and not a particularly welcome one. I adjusted the thermal seal around my neck, making sure no skin was exposed as our helicopter descended toward Halley 6. The station looked like what it was, a series of blue modules raised on hydraulic legs, sitting on the Brunt ice shelf like some sci-fi outpost, which I guess it kind of is. "Lopez, you with me?" Captain Chandler's voice cut through the helicopter noise in my headset. "Yes, sir," I said, turning away from the window. Johnny sat across from me, strapped into his seat, mission folder open on his lap despite the turbulence. 20 years of Antarctic service had turned efficiency into his default setting. "Good. We're landing in 5. He passed the folder across to me. 4 researchers, geological survey team. They missed their scheduled check-in yesterday at 1800 hours. I nodded, taking the folder. Inside were 4 personnel files with photos paperclipped to the corners. Dr. Julie Hamilton looked back at me from the top sheet. Expedition leader, 5 previous Antarctic deployments, specialized in glacial geology. The other 3 were her team, Nick Washington, Sierra Peters, and a graduate student named Bo Wilkins on his first deployment. "Last known coordinates?" I asked. "Grid section E17, about 40 kilometers northeast of base. They were taking core samples along the eastern edge of the Transantarctic Range." The helicopter dropped suddenly, making my stomach lurch. Outside, wind whipped snow across the landing pad. Not a good day for a search mission, but then they never are. "Weather window?" I asked. 6 hours, Chandler said. "After that, another system moves in, forecasting 50-knot winds, visibility near zero. 6 hours. Not much time to find 4 people in the vastness of Antarctica." I studied Hamilton's face again. She didn't look like someone who'd make rookie mistakes, but then neither did Wesley. The thought of my old mentor sent a familiar pang through my chest. 2 years since Wesley Larson disappeared. 2 years, and I still caught myself looking for him sometimes, expecting to hear his voice over the comms. He'd been tracking an anomaly, a gray fox sighting where no fox should exist. Went out alone, against protocol. Never came back. The helicopter touched down with a jolt, skids settling onto the platform. Chandler was already unbuckling his harness. "Ray and Thompson are prepping the equipment," he said. "You'll take the Hagland, standard search and rescue protocol." "Yes, sir," I said, gathering the folder as the rotors slowed above us. The rules Wesley taught me scrolled through my mind as they always did before a mission. 6 simple guidelines that kept you alive down here. Rule 1, always travel in pairs. Rule 2, maintain communication protocols. Rule 3, respect the weather forecasts. Rule 4, know your equipment limits. Rule 5, track your location constantly. Rule 6, if something feels wrong, retreat immediately. Wesley had followed every rule except the last one. His curiosity got the better of him. I wouldn't make the same mistake. We disembarked into the brutal cold. Even with my gear, the wind cut through me as we hurried across the platform toward the main structure. Halley 6 elevated modules connected by enclosed walkways looked almost cheerful with their bright blue exteriors, an illusion of safety in one of the most hostile environments on Earth. Inside, the temperature change was immediate. I pulled back my hood and unsealed my outer layer as we moved through the airlock into the main corridor. The familiar hum of machinery and climate control systems created a background noise that everyone here got used to eventually. It meant the difference between life and death. These systems failing would be a major emergency. "Equipment bay is prepped," Chandler said, leading the way down the corridor. "Ray's got your GPS coordinates programmed already." I nodded, following him. Denise Ray was our navigation specialist, former military with an almost supernatural sense of direction. Jordan Thompson handled communications and medical, young but good under pressure. We'd worked together on 3 previous rescues, a solid team. The equipment bay doors hissed open, revealing Denise and Jordan already in their gear, doing final checks on our supplies. The Hagland tracked vehicle sat ready, its massive treads designed for the harsh Antarctic terrain. "Morning, boss," Jordan said, glancing up from the communications pack he was checking. "Heard we're going fox hunting." I stiffened slightly. Geological team recovery. Not funny, Thompson. Jordan's smile faded. Sorry, bad joke. Denise looked up from her GPS unit. We've got their last transmission coordinates locked in. Forecast gives us a 5-hour 40-minute window before we need to be back. I nodded, appreciating her precision. Captain Chandler has the mission brief. Chandler stepped forward, all business now. Dr. Hamilton's team was conducting ice core sampling near the eastern range. Their last check-in reported all normal, but they mentioned observing what they called unusual formations in the ice structure. Unusual how? I asked. They didn't specify, just that they were extending their sampling area to investigate further. Chandler handed me the mission folder again. Hamilton knows protocol. She's experienced. The fact that they missed check-in could mean equipment failure, but he didn't need to finish. But it could mean something worse. In Antarctica, communication failures were treated as emergencies because they usually were. Equipment didn't just fail here. It failed for reasons. Weather events, accidents, poor decisions. I took the folder, tucking it into my pack. We'll find them. 6 hours, Chandler reminded me. Not a minute more. Weather system's accelerating. If you're not back by then, we can't send another team until it clears. Which could be days. In Antarctica, being stranded for days meant death. Understood, I said. Denise closed her GPS case. Vehicles prepped. Full fuel, emergency supplies, medical kit, extra oxygen. Comms are tested and operational. Then let's move, I said, zipping my outer layer back up. We loaded into the Hagland, the vehicle's interior cramped but functional. I took the driver's position, with Denise beside me handling navigation. Jordan settled in the back with the communications equipment. The familiar routine helped steady my nerves. This was just another rescue mission. Find the researchers, bring them back. Simple. Except nothing was ever simple in Antarctica. The bay doors opened, exposing us to the elements again. I started the engine, feeling the powerful vibration as the tracks engaged. The Hagland was ugly, but reliable, exactly what you needed here. Base, this is Rescue Team Alpha departing Halley 6 at 0817 hours, Jordan said into his headset. Estimated return 1300 hours. Copy that, Alpha, came the response. Weather window confirmed. Safe travels. I guided the vehicle down the ramp and onto the ice shelf. The world outside was a study in whites and grays, the sky and ground blending together at the horizon. Wind-sculpted snow formations rose like frozen waves across the landscape, beautiful and deadly. Heading northeast, Denise confirmed, eyes on her equipment. 42 kilometers to last known coordinates. Estimated travel time at current conditions, 57 minutes. I nodded, focusing on driving. The Hagland handled the terrain well, but attention was still required. Crevasses could be hidden under fresh snow. Whiteout conditions could develop with almost no warning. So, what do you think they found? Jordan asked from the back after we'd been traveling for about 15 minutes. Probably nothing, I said. Equipment failure is still the most likely explanation. Hamilton mentioned unusual formations. He pressed. What if it's something like what Larson was tracking? I tightened my grip on the controls. Larson was chasing a mirage. There are no foxes in Antarctica. He saw something, Jordan insisted. Drop it, Denise cut in sharply. Focus on the mission. I shot her a grateful glance. Wesley had been my mentor, and his disappearance still felt like an open wound. Everyone at Halley knew that, including Jordan. But he was young, still fascinated by the mysteries of this place rather than terrified by them. He hadn't lost anyone yet. The Hagland crawled forward across the ice shelf, its tracks providing good traction despite the conditions. Outside, the wind picked up, sending sheets of snow dancing across our path. The temperature readout showed -38°C, deadly cold, even with proper gear. Think they're still alive? Jordan asked quietly after several minutes of silence. I didn't answer immediately. The truth was, survival past 24 hours in these conditions depended on a lot of factors. Did they have shelter? Were they injured? Did they have supplies? Hamilton was experienced, which improved their chances, but experience only went so far against the raw power of an Antarctic storm. They're researchers, not explorers, I finally said. But Hamilton knows the protocols. If they ran into trouble, she'd have established a shelter and conserved resources. Unless they couldn't, Denise said. eyes still on her navigation equipment. That was the unspoken possibility hanging between us. Some situations didn't allow for proper procedure. Some situations happened too fast for experience to matter. We continued in silence for another 20 minutes. The landscape changed subtly as we approached the mountain range. More variation in the terrain, pressure ridges in the ice creating natural barriers we had to navigate around. Denise directed me confidently, calling out course corrections as needed. 2 kilometers to their last reported position, she announced eventually. I slowed our pace, eyes scanning the horizon. The Transantarctic mountains loomed ahead, their dark stone faces a stark contrast to the endless white surrounding them. The researchers should have been visible by now, their equipment, their camp, something. Thompson, try their emergency frequency, I said. Jordan nodded, adjusting his communications equipment. Research Team Hamilton, this is Rescue Team Alpha from Halley 6. Do you copy? He paused, listening. Research Team Hamilton, please respond on any channel. Nothing but static answered him. He tried again, switching frequencies. Still nothing. No response on any channel, he confirmed. I'm not even picking up their emergency beacon. That wasn't good. The emergency beacons were designed to activate automatically if the main communications failed. They were redundant systems, powered separately. We're approaching the coordinates now, Denise said, her voice tense. I slowed the Hagland further, peering through the windshield. There should be tents, equipment, vehicles, but there was nothing but unbroken snow. Are you sure about those coordinates? I asked. Denise nodded. Positive. This is exactly where their last transmission originated. I stopped the vehicle. Thompson, grab the binoculars. Ray, double-check those coordinates against their filed expedition plan. Jordan handed me the high-powered binoculars from his pack. I scanned the area slowly, methodically. The visibility was good today. We should be able to see at least a kilometer in every direction. But there was nothing. No camp, no equipment, no sign that anyone had been here. Coordinates matched their filed plan, Denise confirmed. This is where they should be. Could they have moved? Jordan suggested. Maybe they found something interesting further along the range. Without updating their position, I shook my head. Hamilton wouldn't do that. But people did unexpected things in Antarctica. Wesley had. The thought sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the temperature. We need to search the area, I decided. Standard grid pattern. They might have left markers or equipment we can't see from here. I guided the Hagland forward again, moving slowly. We began a systematic search of the area, expanding outward from the coordinates in a spiral pattern. Denise tracked our position meticulously, ensuring we didn't miss any section. After 20 minutes of searching, Jordan spotted something. There, he called out, pointing toward a small dark object partially buried in snow about 50 meters to our right. I turned the vehicle, approaching cautiously. As we got closer, I could see it was a piece of equipment, a tripod for a surveying instrument, tipped over and partially covered by drifting snow. I stopped the Hagland about 10 meters away. Thompson, you're with me. Ray, maintain position and keep comms open. We exited the vehicle, the cold immediately assaulting us despite our gear. The snow crunched under our boots as we approached the tripod. I knelt beside it, brushing away the snow. The equipment was high-end, exactly what a geological team would use, and it hadn't been here long, a day, maybe 2, based on how much snow had accumulated. They were definitely here, I said, examining the tripod. No damage I could see, just tipped over. Spread out. Look for more equipment, footprints, anything. Jordan nodded, moving in a widening circle. I stood, scanning the area more carefully now. The wind had likely erased most footprints, but heavier equipment would leave impressions in the snow that might still be visible. Bernard, Jordan called after a few minutes. Over here. I walked toward him, about 20 meters from the tripod. He was kneeling in the snow examining something. As I got closer, I saw it was a sample case, the kind used to store ice cores. It was open, empty. No damage, Jordan noted. Just abandoned. I frowned. Researchers didn't abandon expensive equipment and samples, not without good reason. Keep looking, I said. We continued searching the area, finding more evidence of the research team's presence. Another piece of surveying equipment, a glove, A backpack containing personal items that belonged to Sierra Peters according to the ID inside, all scattered within about 100-meter radius, all seemingly abandoned rather than damaged. "It's like they just walked away from their equipment," Jordan said, voicing what I was thinking. "Or were forced to leave it behind quickly," I countered. "By what? There's no sign of an avalanche or crevasse, no blood, no signs of struggle." He was right. There was no obvious explanation for why 4 experienced researchers would abandon their equipment and disappear. I keyed my comm. "Ray, any sign of their camp or vehicles?" "Negative," Denise responded. "But I'm picking up something strange on the radar about half a kilometer east of your position. Looks like a depression in the ice sheet that doesn't match our topographical maps." I looked at Jordan. "Let's check it out." We returned to the Hagland and drove in the direction Denise indicated. As we approached the location, I could see what she meant. There was a large circular depression in the ice sheet, maybe 30 meters across. It wasn't deep, just a meter or so, but its perfect circular shape was immediately suspicious. Natural ice formations didn't create perfect circles. I stopped the vehicle at the edge of the depression. "What do you make of that?" Denise shook her head. "Not natural. Could be man-made, but it's not on any of our maps." "The unusual formation Hamilton mentioned?" Jordan suggested. "Possibly." I checked the time. We'd been searching for almost an hour. 5 hours left in our weather window. "We need to check it out," I decided. "All of us. Standard safety protocol. Tethered approach." We exited the vehicle and prepared our safety lines. Antarctica rule number 1, never travel alone. Rule number 5, always track your location. The tethers served both purposes, keeping us connected to each other and to the vehicle. We approached the edge of the depression cautiously. Up close, the circle was even more unnervingly perfect, as if someone had used a giant cookie cutter on the ice sheet. The surface within the circle was smooth, almost polished compared to the surrounding area. "I'm taking samples," Denise said, kneeling at the edge with collection tools. "Check for any signs the research team was here," I instructed Jordan. He nodded, moving carefully along the perimeter while remaining tethered. I stayed at the edge, studying the formation. Something about it made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It wasn't just unusual, it was wrong. Out of place. Rule 6 echoed in my mind. If something feels wrong, retreat immediately. But 4 people were missing. If this was what they'd been investigating, it might be our only clue to their whereabouts. "Bernard," Jordan called. "Footprints, partially preserved under that overhang." I moved toward him, careful of my footing. He was right. There were footprint impressions in the snow, protected from the wind by a small ice overhang. 4 distinct sets, leading toward the center of the circle. "No prints leading away," I noted, feeling that wrongness intensify. "They walked in but didn't walk out?" Jordan asked, voice tense. "Maybe they left another way," Denise suggested, joining us with her samples secured. "There's something else," Jordan said, pointing to markings in the snow near the footprints. "Looks like writing." I knelt down, brushing away loose snow to reveal letters carved into the harder-packed snow beneath. The carving was crude, done in haste, but legible. Rule 6. My blood ran cold. Rule 6. If something feels wrong, retreat immediately. Hamilton had left a warning. "We need to go," I said, standing up. "Now." "What? We just found their trail," Jordan protested. "And a warning to stay away," I countered. "We're retreating to base and sending a larger team with more equipment." "But they could still be alive out here somewhere," Jordan argued. "And we'll find them," I said firmly. "But not by making the same mistake they did. Whatever this is, it's not a standard rescue situation anymore." Denise nodded her agreement. "The warning changes things. We need more resources." Jordan looked like he wanted to argue further but finally nodded. We carefully made our way back to the Hagland, maintaining our tether line until safely inside. I started the engine, checking the time again. 4 hours and 40 minutes left in our window. Plenty of time to return to base if we left now. "Rescue Team Alpha to Halley 6, Jordan called into the comm. "We found evidence of Research Team Hamilton but no personnel. Requesting..." He stopped suddenly, staring at his equipment. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Comms are down," he said, adjusting dials. "I was just transmitting fine a minute ago." Denise checked her GPS. Navigation systems are functioning normally. Could be interference from the mountain range. Let's get clear of the area, then try again, I decided, putting the Hagland in gear. I turned the vehicle around, heading back the way we'd come. The wind was picking up now, small particles of ice pelting the windshield. I glanced at the weather readout, still within acceptable parameters, but deteriorating faster than forecast. As we moved away from the circular depression, Jordan continued trying the communications equipment. Still nothing, he reported after several minutes. Not even emergency channels. That was concerning. The comm system had multiple redundancies specifically to prevent total failure. Keep trying, I said. Ray, how's our course looking? Denise checked her instruments. On track, 40 kilometers back to base. At current speed, we should return with 3 hours to spare before the weather window closes. I nodded, focusing on driving. The Antarctic landscape stretched endlessly around us, vast and empty. Somewhere out there were 4 missing researchers, but we'd found their warning, and I intended to heed it. Wesley hadn't retreated when things felt wrong. He'd pushed forward, following his curiosity about that impossible fox sighting. Now he was gone, and 4 more people might have made the same mistake. I wouldn't add our names to that list. We'd return to base, report what we'd found, and come back with a larger team and better equipment. That was protocol. That was survival. The Hagland moved steadily across the ice, carrying us away from the mysterious circle and toward the safety of Halley 6. Behind us, the Transantarctic Mountains loomed silently, keeping their secrets for now. The ice stretched ahead of us, a white expanse broken only by the tracks our Hagland left behind. I kept my eyes on the horizon, hands steady on the controls. The vehicle rumbled beneath us, the only sound besides the occasional crackle from Jordan's radio as he tried to get it working again. Still nothing? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Dead as a doornail, Jordan said from the back. I've checked every frequency twice. Whatever knocked it out did a thorough job. Denise tapped her finger against the navigation display. We're making good time. Weather's holding steady for now, but the front's moving faster than predicted. I nodded, focusing on keeping our course straight. 2 hours into our journey back to base, and I couldn't shake the uneasiness crawling up my spine. Those footprints leading into the circle, but not out. The carved warning. Rule 6. Julie Hamilton knew something was wrong. She'd tried to warn others. Wait! Stop! Jordan called suddenly from behind me. Did you see that? I eased off the throttle, bringing the Hagland to a gradual halt. See what? There! Jordan pointed toward the right, his voice rising with excitement. Something moved out there, about 50 meters off our starboard side. Denise and I both turned to look. At first, I saw nothing but the endless white. Then, movement. A small shape, gray against the snow, moving with purpose across the ice. My stomach dropped. Is that a fox? Jordan asked, pressing his face against the window. It was. A small gray fox, its coat almost silver in the Antarctic light, trotting across the ice as if it belonged here. As if it were possible. That can't be, Denise said, squinting through her window. There are no land mammals native to Antarctica. But there it was, moving with easy confidence across terrain that should have killed it instantly. The same impossible creature Wesley had reported seeing 2 years ago. The same animal he'd followed to his death. We need to follow it, Jordan said, already reaching for his gear. This could be connected to the missing researchers. Maybe they followed it too. No. The word came out harder than I intended, but I didn't soften it. Absolutely not. But Bernard, I said no. I turned to face him fully. Wesley Larson saw a fox. He followed it. He never came back. We're not making the same mistake. Jordan stared at me, frustration clear on his face. But what if it leads us to the missing team? What if they followed it? Then they made the same mistake Wesley did. I started the Hagland again, the engine roaring to life. And I'm not adding our names to that list. Bernard's right, Denise said, her voice firm. Whatever that is, and I'm not convinced it's actually a fox. It shouldn't be here. Nothing about it is natural. Jordan wasn't giving up. But if it's connected to their disappearance, then we report it when we get back to base, I cut in. And a larger team with proper equipment can investigate. That's protocol. Protocol won't help them if they're freezing to death right now. I took a deep breath, keeping my eyes on the horizon rather than the gray shape still visible in my peripheral vision. "Jordan, what's the first rule of Antarctic survival?" He sighed. "Always travel in pairs." "And the sixth?" A longer pause. "If something feels wrong, retreat immediately." "That fox feels wrong," I said, accelerating the Hagland forward. "We're retreating to base." The vehicle lurched forward, and I deliberately steered us away from the fox's path. In the side mirror, I watched the small gray shape stop and turn, seeming to watch us leave. A chill that had nothing to do with the temperature ran through me. "I don't like this," Jordan muttered, but he didn't argue further. "None of us do," Denise replied, "but Bernard's call is the right one." We drove in silence for several minutes. The fox disappeared behind us, but its image stayed burned in my mind. Wesley had seen the same thing. Had he been alone when he spotted it? Had he radioed it in before following? The official report never said. "Wait," Denise said suddenly. "These aren't the coordinates we passed on the way out." I frowned, checking our position. "We're on the return route." "Yes, but we're passing through the research team's original location. Their camp should be just ahead." She was right. In our spiral search pattern earlier, we'd missed the actual campsite. Now our direct route back was taking us straight through it. "Should we stop?" Jordan asked, his earlier frustration replaced with professional focus. I slowed the Hagland. "Yes, quick check only. 15 minutes max." We approached carefully. From a distance, I could see several shapes breaking the flat white landscape. Tents, equipment, the researchers' own Hagland vehicle. As we drew closer, the scene became clearer, and my unease deepened. I stopped our vehicle 30 meters from their camp and cut the engine. "Something's not right," I said. The camp looked undisturbed. 4 bright orange Antarctic tents stood in their standard formation, secured against the wind. The researchers' Hagland was parked nearby, partially covered with a light dusting of snow. Equipment cases were stacked neatly beside the largest tent. It looked like a normal Antarctic research camp, except for the complete absence of people. "Where is everyone?" Jordan voiced what we were all thinking. "Let's find out." I grabbed my gear. "Standard protocol. Stay within visual range. No one goes anywhere alone." We exited the Hagland, the cold hitting us immediately despite our thermal gear. The wind had picked up, cutting through layers of insulation. We moved toward the camp in a tight group, alert for any movement or sign of the researchers. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Antarctic silence has a quality all its own, a complete absence of sound that feels almost solid. But this silence felt wrong somehow, expectant. "Their Hagland's still fully functional," Denise called from where she'd moved to check the vehicle. "Fuel levels normal. Engine starts." I approached the main tent, calling out before unzipping the entrance. "Dr. Hamilton? Nick? Anyone here?" No response. I pulled open the tent flap and peered inside. A table with research equipment, 4 sleeping bags laid out, a portable heater turned off, notebooks open, pencils beside them, a half-drunk cup of coffee, frozen solid. "They left in a hurry," I said as Jordan and Denise joined me. "Or they never left at all," Jordan murmured. I moved to the next tent. Same story. Personal belongings left behind. A book opened and placed face down. A pair of glasses folded neatly beside a sleeping bag. A photo of a smiling family taped to the tent wall. "Bernard!" Denise called from the third tent. "You need to see this." I ducked inside to find her holding a radio, the team's communication equipment. "It's still working," she said, turning it over in her gloved hands. "Battery's good, no damage." "Why wouldn't they take their radio?" Jordan asked. I took the radio from Denise and checked the settings. "Let's see if there's any recorded transmissions." There was. One message, recorded yesterday at 17:43, just minutes before their scheduled check-in time. I pressed play. Static hissed. Then Julie Hamilton's voice came through, tense but controlled. "Don't know what they are, but they're spreading. The dark patches in the ice. Nick says they're just surface discoloration, but I've seen them move. Not sure how else to describe it. We're packing up now." Bo thinks he saw someone on the ridge to the east, but that's impossible. No other teams are scheduled in this sector. Weather's turning. We'll head back to base once. The message cut off abruptly. We stood in silence for a moment, the implications sinking in. "Dark patches?" Jordan whispered. "Let's finish checking the camp," I said, pocketing the radio. 5 more minutes, then we go. We spread out, still within sight of each other, checking the remaining tent and the equipment scattered around the camp. Everything looked normal, except for the absence of 4 people who should have been there. "Bernard," Jordan called from where he stood at the edge of the camp. "I think I found those dark patches Hamilton mentioned." I moved quickly to his side, Denise joining us. About 20 meters from the camp, the snow surface changed. Dark circular areas, each roughly a meter in diameter, dotted the ice. They weren't quite black, more a deep midnight blue, like looking into deep water. "Don't get any closer," I said sharply as Jordan took a step toward the nearest one. "What are they?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. But Hamilton said they were spreading, and that she saw them move. Denise crouched, careful to keep her distance. "They look like holes, but not holes. More like the ice is different there, thinner maybe." I counted at least 7 of the dark spots, arranged in no pattern I could discern. "We need to move," I said suddenly, grabbing both their arms. "Now, back to our vehicle." "What? Why?" Jordan asked, but he didn't resist as I pulled them away. "Because I think these are what Hamilton was warning about, the spots where people disappear." Neither argued. We moved quickly back to our hagland, the sense of wrongness growing with each step. I felt watched, though when I scanned the horizon, I saw nothing but ice and distant mountains. Once inside the vehicle, I started the engine immediately. "We mark this location," I said. "We report everything we've found. Then we continue searching and expanding circles around this site. The research team might still be out there." Denise nodded, marking our current position on her tablet. If they left in a hurry, they'd be on foot. In these conditions, she didn't need to finish. We all knew what that meant. Without proper shelter, humans couldn't survive Antarctic conditions for long. "They had cold weather gear," Jordan said, "and they're experienced. Well, except for Bo." "Let's hope so," I said, steering us away from the abandoned camp. "We've got about 4 hours of daylight left. We'll search as long as we can before setting up emergency shelter." We moved in a spiral pattern outward from the camp, watching for any sign of the missing researchers. The radio remained silent despite Jordan's continued attempts to raise someone, anyone, on any frequency. As the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the ice, Denise suddenly straightened in her seat. "There," she said, pointing toward a distant ridge. "On that outcropping, I see something." I slowed the hagland, following her gaze. At first, I saw nothing. Then, a figure resolved against the sky, a man standing motionless on the ridge. Even from this distance, details were clear, tall and thin, with straight white hair that seemed to glow in the fading light. He wore what looked like a parka, but no other visible cold weather gear. "That's got to be one of them," Jordan said, already reaching for the door. "We need to—" "No." I locked the doors with a quick press of a button. "We don't approach." "What?" "Bernard, that could be Nick Washington or Bo Wilkins. They could be hurt." I kept my eyes on the distant figure, which hadn't moved at all since we spotted it. Not even a shift in posture. No wave for help. Nothing. "That's not one of the researchers," I said quietly. "How can you know that?" Jordan demanded. "Because no one could stand that still in these temperatures without full gear. Because the hair is wrong. Because—" I swallowed hard. "Because approaching that figure means certain death." "You can't possibly know that," Jordan argued, but I heard the uncertainty in his voice. "I know," I said simply. Denise studied the figure through binoculars. "He's not moving at all, not even swaying, and he's looking right at us." I put the hagland in reverse, backing us away slowly. "We're setting up emergency shelter for the night. The sun will be down soon and we don't want to be driving in the dark." Jordan looked like he wanted to argue more, but one glance at my face changed his mind. "All right, but we're reporting this when we radio base camp." "Of course," I agreed, finding a suitable spot about a kilometer from both the abandoned camp and the ridge with the figure. I didn't look back to see if it was still watching us. Setting up our emergency shelter took 20 minutes of practiced movements. Antarctic field shelters were designed for quick deployment in harsh conditions, essentially a reinforced tent with superior insulation and a small heating element. Not comfortable, but enough to keep us alive through the night. Once inside, Jordan established radio contact with Halley 6. The base communications officer sounded relieved to hear from us, as our prolonged silence had caused concern. Jordan reported everything: the abandoned camp, the dark patches, the recorded message, and the figure on the ridge. He didn't mention the fox. I wasn't sure if that was an oversight or deliberate. "Understood," came the reply. "Maintain your position overnight. Weather system has accelerated. Expect whiteout conditions by 0700 hours. Captain Chandler is organizing a secondary search team to depart as soon as conditions permit." "Copy that," Jordan responded. "We'll resume search operations at first light." After signing off, we organized our watch rotation. I took first watch, then Denise, with Jordan taking the pre-dawn shift. As Denise and Jordan settled into their sleeping bags, I sat near the shelter entrance, checking and rechecking our equipment. The shelter was quiet, except for the low hum of the heater and the occasional creak of the structure as the wind picked up outside. My thoughts kept returning to the fox, to the dark patches, to the figure on the ridge. Connected somehow, I was certain of it, just as I was certain they were connected to Wesley's disappearance 2 years ago. I must have dozed despite my best intentions because I startled when Denise shook my shoulder. "My watch," she whispered. "Get some sleep, Bernard." I nodded, too tired to argue. As I settled into my sleeping bag, I heard her checking the perimeter monitors we'd set up around the shelter. Standard procedure, motion sensors that would alert us if anything larger than a snowflake came within 20 meters. Sleep came quickly but didn't last. I woke to Denise shaking me again, her face pale in the dim light of the shelter. "Bernard," she whispered, her voice tight with controlled fear. "There's someone outside." I sat up immediately, fully alert. "Jordan?" "Still asleep." She nodded toward his still form. The perimeter sensors didn't trigger, but I saw her through the observation port. A woman, standing about 10 meters from the shelter. I pulled on my boots quickly. "One of the researchers?" "No," Denise swallowed. "She's wearing a sundress, no coat, no gear, nothing, and she's just standing there in minus 40-degree weather." My blood ran cold. I moved to the observation port and looked out into the Antarctic night. There she was, a woman with long dark hair, wearing what looked like a yellow summer dress, standing barefoot in the snow. No visible breath in the freezing air, no shivering, just standing, looking directly at our shelter, her face expressionless. "That's impossible," I whispered, though I was seeing it with my own eyes. Human Biology 101. Exposed skin in these temperatures would develop frostbite within minutes. Without proper protection, death would follow quickly. Yet there she stood, seemingly unaffected by conditions that would kill any living person. "What do we do?" Denise asked, her calm, professional demeanor showing cracks for the first time since I'd known her. I watched the woman for another moment. She didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, waiting. "We stay inside," I said finally. "We don't go out there. We don't open the door. Not for anything." Denise nodded, her eyes still fixed on the impossible woman standing in the snow. "Do you think she took them? Hamilton and the others?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. We both knew that whatever was out there wasn't human, wasn't natural. And we both knew that if we stepped outside, we'd never make it back to tell anyone what we'd found. I jumped up, grabbed my thermal jacket, and started packing, not saying a word, not needing to. The woman outside our shelter wasn't going anywhere, and we weren't staying to find out what she wanted. "Pack everything, now." I kept my voice low, but firm. 10 minutes, essential gear only." Denise was already moving, stuffing her sleeping bag into its compression sack with practiced efficiency. Jordan was still rubbing sleep from his eyes, confused by the sudden activity. "What's happening?" he mumbled, reaching for his boots. "Woman's still out there," Denise told him, not looking up from her packing. "We're leaving." I grabbed the emergency protocol checklist from my pocket. Standard Antarctic rescue procedure says you don't abandon shelter in deteriorating conditions, but standard procedure never accounted for impossible women in sundresses standing motionless in minus 40. "But the sensors," Jordan started. "Don't work on her," I finished, checking the fuel gauge on our portable stove before disconnecting it. "Pack your gear. Questions later." The shelter was small enough that we bumped elbows as we worked, our breath forming clouds in the cold air. Outside, the wind had picked up, creating that hollow, whistling sound that meant the weather front was moving in faster than expected. Not good. but staying put was worse. I ran through Wesley's rules in my head as I packed. Rule 6 kept flashing like a warning light. If something feels wrong, retreat immediately. Well, something was definitely wrong. The woman hadn't moved an inch since we'd spotted her, hadn't blinked, hadn't shivered, just stood there in her yellow sundress with her bare feet in the snow staring at our shelter. "Comms equipment?" I asked, zipping my duffel. "Got it," Jordan said, holding up the radio we'd found at the research camp, the one that actually worked. "Our original radio's still dead." "Navigation gear?" I looked at Denise. "Packed and ready," she said, tightening her bootlaces. "GPS is operational. Motion sensors are coming with us." "Good." I checked my watch. 7 minutes since we started packing. Haglund's preheated. We move in 3. I took one last look around the shelter, making sure we hadn't forgotten anything critical. Leaving gear behind in Antarctica is something you avoid at all costs, but right now, speed mattered more than equipment. "Is she still there?" Jordan whispered, hesitating by the door. I moved to the small observation port. The woman hadn't moved, still staring, still barefoot in the snow, still impossible. "Yeah," I said, "she's still there." "What if she tries to stop us?" Jordan asked, his voice tight with fear. I didn't have a good answer for that. "We don't stop, we don't engage, we don't look back." Denise zipped up her jacket. "Ready when you are." I nodded, taking a deep breath. "I'll go first. Denise, you're second. Jordan, you bring up the rear. 10 seconds between each of us. Straight to the Haglund. Don't run, don't panic, don't look at her. Got it?" They both nodded. "All right, let's move." I unzipped the shelter door, hit by a blast of frigid air that burned my lungs. The sky was still dark, but the horizon showed the faintest hint of gray. Dawn was coming, but we couldn't wait for it. I stepped outside, keeping my eyes fixed on the Haglund 10 meters away. Every instinct screamed at me to look at the woman to see if she was moving, but I kept my focus forward, one foot in front of the other. The snow crunched beneath my boots. The wind bit at my exposed cheeks. I reached the vehicle, yanked open the driver's door, and threw my pack inside. I turned the key, and the engine growled to life, dashboard lights glowing orange in the darkness. Through the windshield, I could see Denise emerging from the shelter, moving with the same deliberate pace I had used. She reached the passenger side and climbed in, breathing hard. "She didn't move," Denise said, fastening her seatbelt. "Just kept staring at the shelter." Jordan was next, practically diving into the back seat, slamming the door behind him. "She turned her head," he gasped. "She watched me the whole way. Jesus Christ, she watched me." I shifted the Haglund into gear. "Everyone strapped in?" 2 affirmative responses. "Then we're gone." I accelerated away from the shelter, the tracked vehicle's engine roaring as we picked up speed. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating swirling snow and endless white. I kept my eyes on the terrain ahead, focusing on navigating the uneven surface. "She's still watching us," Jordan said from the back seat, his face pressed against the window. "Don't look back," I told him, checking the GPS. "Denise, what's our heading?" "North-northwest," she replied, adjusting the navigation system. "Halley 66 is still our best option, but we've got 50 kilometers in deteriorating conditions." I nodded, hands tight on the steering wheel. "What about Hamilton's team's last known position?" "The circular depression? That's 30 kilometers east of here." "No," I said, shaking my head. "Their camp, where we found their equipment." Denise checked the GPS. 22 kilometers northeast. Why? You want to check it again?" "No." I adjusted our course slightly. "But we need to establish a search grid. If they're alive, they couldn't have gone far in these conditions." Jordan leaned forward between the front seats. "Why'd we leave so fast? We could have waited until daylight." I kept my eyes on the terrain ahead. "People who stay near her don't survive." "You've seen her before?" Jordan asked, his voice rising. I shook my head. "Not her specifically, but Wesley told me stories. Researchers who reported seeing people where there shouldn't be any. Most of them had accidents within 24 hours. The ones who immediately retreated survived." "Jesus," Jordan muttered, falling back into his seat. "You think Hamilton's team saw her too?" Denise asked, checking the radar for any sign of the missing researchers. "Maybe, or something like her." I adjusted our speed as we hit a rough patch of ice. "That's why I'm hoping they retreated too." We drove in silence for several minutes, each lost in our own thoughts. The sky was gradually lightening, turning from black to deep blue. Wind whipped snow across our path, reducing visibility to about 30 meters. "Bernard," Jordan said suddenly, "you need to hear this." He was holding up the researcher's radio, turning up the volume. Through the static, a voice was trying to break through. "Repeat, this is Dr. Julie Hamilton. If anyone can hear this, please respond. Our position is approximately 15 kilometers southeast of our original campsite. We've found shelter in an ice cave system. Repeat, this is Dr. Julie Hamilton." Jordan scrambled to respond. "Dr. Hamilton, this is Jordan Thompson with the rescue team from Halley 6. We hear you. Are you and your team all right?" Static crackled, then, "Thompson? Thank God. Yes, we're all here. Nick, Sierra, Bo. We're cold and running low on supplies, but we're alive." Relief flooded through me. They were alive, all four of them. "Dr. Hamilton, this is Bernard Lopez. Can you give us your exact coordinates?" More static, then Hamilton's voice came through again, providing a string of numbers that Denise immediately punched into the GPS. "We've got them," Denise said, a smile breaking across her face. 15 kilometers southeast of their original camp, just like she said. There's a small ridge formation there, probably where the ice caves are located. I adjusted our course. "Dr. Hamilton, we're on our way to your position. ETA approximately 1 hour. Do you have any injuries to report?" "Negative on serious injuries," Hamilton responded. "Mild hypothermia concerns for Bo, but we've been keeping him warm. The rest of us are exhausted but stable." "Understood. Maintain your position. We're coming to you." "Lopez," Hamilton's voice crackled again. "Be careful. There's something out here. Something wrong." I exchanged a glance with Denise. "We know, Dr. Hamilton. We've seen it too. Stay in your shelter. We're coming to you." The radio went silent. Jordan set it down carefully. "They followed the fox, didn't they?" he said quietly. I didn't answer right away, focusing on navigating a particularly rough stretch of terrain. The morning light was revealing more details now. Pressure ridges, wind-sculpted snow formations, the occasional exposed rock. "Probably," I finally said. "But they got lucky. Wesley didn't." "Or maybe they saw something else," Denise suggested. "Something that made them run in the right direction." I thought about that. About Wesley's stories of researchers seeing impossible things before accidents claimed them. About the woman in the sundress who didn't trigger our motion sensors. About Hamilton's warning that something was wrong. "Whatever happened," I said, "they're alive. That's what matters." The next hour passed in tense silence. I pushed the Hagland as fast as I dared in the deteriorating conditions, while Denise kept her eyes on the navigation system and Jordan maintained radio contact with Hamilton's team. The sky had lightened to a pale gray, but visibility remained poor as wind-driven snow swirled around us. "There," Denise pointed ahead and to our right. "That ridge formation, the cave entrance should be on the southern face." I slowed our approach, scanning the ridgeline for any sign of movement. The ridge wasn't particularly high, maybe 15 meters at its peak, but it offered the only break in the otherwise flat expanse of ice and snow. "I see it," Jordan said, pointing. "There's an opening at the base." As we drew closer, I could make out a dark slash in the white landscape, the entrance to the ice cave. And standing just outside it, waving frantically, was a figure in a red parka. "That's Hamilton," Denise confirmed, checking the team photos we'd been provided. I brought the Hagland to a stop about 10 meters from the cave entrance. Jordan, medical kit. Denise, emergency rations and thermal blankets. We exited the vehicle, the wind immediately biting through our layers of clothing. Dr. Hamilton approached, her face partially obscured by her hood and frost-covered mask. "Lopez?" she called over the wind. "From Halley 6? I nodded, extending my hand. "Dr. Hamilton, glad we found you." She shook my hand firmly, then gestured toward the cave. "The others are inside. Bo's having the hardest time, but he'll be okay once we get him warmed up." We followed her into the cave, which opened into a surprisingly spacious chamber about 5 meters across. The temperature was still well below freezing, but the absence of wind made it feel considerably warmer than outside. 3 figures huddled together against the far wall, surrounded by what looked like emergency blankets and makeshift sleeping arrangements. "Nick, Sierra, Bo," Hamilton said. This is the rescue team from Halley 6. Dr. Nick Washington stood first, extending his hand. He was shorter than I'd expected, with rectangular glasses and premature gray streaks in his dark hair. Thank you for coming. We thought we might be stuck out here. Sierra Peters nodded in greeting but stayed beside Bo Wilkins, who looked to be in the worst shape. Pale, shivering, with that 1,000-yard stare that comes with extreme exhaustion and early-stage hypothermia. Jordan immediately went to work, checking Bo's vital signs while Denise distributed thermal blankets and emergency rations. I pulled Hamilton aside. What happened out there, Dr. Hamilton? Your last radio transmission mentioned dark patches in the ice and someone on the eastern ridge. Hamilton rubbed her gloved hands together, her expression troubled. We were collecting core samples when Nick noticed these strange dark areas in the ice, almost like holes, but not holes. The ice was just different there. We found them at your camp, I said. About 7 spots, each about a meter across. She nodded. They weren't there when we set up camp. They appeared on our second day. Nick thought they were some kind of surface discoloration, maybe from mineral deposits. But she hesitated. They seemed to move when you weren't looking directly at them. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. And the person on the ridge? That was Bo who saw it first. A tall figure just watching us. We all saw it eventually. Standing perfectly still, no proper gear, just watching. We decided to pack up immediately, but then she trailed off. Then what? We saw the fox, she said quietly. Silver gray. It appeared at the edge of our camp, just watching us. Then it started moving away, stopping occasionally as if waiting for us to follow. And you followed it, I said. Not a question. Hamilton nodded. It sounds crazy now, but it felt right at the time, like it was trying to help us. It led us away from camp, away from the figure on the ridge. We followed it for hours until we found these caves. I glanced over at the rest of her team, now accepting hot drinks from Jordan's thermos. And the fox? Disappeared once we found the caves, she said. We haven't seen it since. I processed this information, trying to reconcile it with what I knew about Wesley's disappearance. He had followed a fox too, but he never came back. Dr. Hamilton, I said carefully, did you see a woman in a yellow sundress? Her eyes widened slightly. No, just the figure on the ridge. Why? Did you see someone like that? I nodded. Outside our emergency shelter this morning, standing barefoot in the snow, not moving, not affected by the cold. Hamilton shuddered visibly. What is happening out here, Lopez? I don't know, I admitted. But we need to get everyone back to Halley 6 as soon as possible. I rejoined the others where Jordan was helping Bo to his feet. He's stable, Jordan reported. Mild hypothermia, exhaustion, dehydration. Nothing life-threatening, but we should get him back to base ASAP. How are the rest of you? I asked, looking at Nick and Sierra. Cold, tired, but functional, Nick said, adjusting his glasses. His voice was precise, measured. We've been rationing our emergency supplies since yesterday evening. Sierra nodded in agreement. We can travel, just need to get warm. Good, I said. Let's move out. The weather's deteriorating and we've got a long drive back to Halley 6. We helped the research team gather what little equipment they had with them, mostly personal items, 1 sample case, and a few research notebooks, and made our way back to the Hagland. I arranged the seating with Bo in the middle of the back seat, flanked by Nick and Sierra to share body heat, while Hamilton sat up front with Denise and me. As I started the engine, I couldn't help scanning our surroundings, looking for any sign of the woman in the sundress, the tall figure on the ridge, or the silver-gray fox. But there was nothing visible through the swirling snow except the endless white landscape. Everyone secure? I asked, checking that all doors were properly closed. A chorus of affirmatives answered me. I put the Hagland in gear and began our journey back to Halley 6, constantly watching the terrain ahead and occasionally checking the mirrors for anything following us. The research team was alive, which was more than I had dared hope for when we set out on this rescue mission. But something was very wrong out here on the ice, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't safe yet. Hamilton seemed to read my thoughts. Do you think we'll see them again? The figure? The fox? I kept my eyes on the path ahead. I don't know, but we're not stopping to find out. The radio crackled to life with a burst of static that made me jump. I hadn't touched it. Nobody had. It was just sitting there in the back, tucked between the medical supplies and Jordan's pack. "What the hell?" Jordan twisted in his seat, reaching for the radio. I kept my eyes on the path ahead, navigating through snow that was getting deeper by the minute. Visibility had dropped to maybe 30 meters. The Haglund's headlights cut through the swirling white, but not by much. "Probably just interference," I said, though I didn't believe it. Nothing out here was just anything. Then it started. A voice came through the speaker, low and guttural. Not English. Not any language I recognized. The words, if they were words, sounded all wrong, like they were being forced through a throat that wasn't meant to make those sounds. "Can anyone understand that?" Nick asked from the back seat. Nobody answered. The voice continued, paused, then repeated the same sequence. A loop. "Turn it off," I said to Jordan. He reached for the volume knob, but before he could touch it, the voice got louder. Not just a little louder, like someone had cranked it to maximum. The sound filled the cabin, drowning out the engine noise and the wind outside. Sierra covered her ears. "Jesus Christ!" Jordan hit the power button. Nothing happened. The voice kept going, getting even louder somehow. I could feel it vibrating in my chest. "Kill it," I said, keeping the Haglund steady despite wanting to clamp my hands over my ears. "Take the battery out." Jordan fumbled with the back panel while Dr. Hamilton leaned forward from her seat beside Denise. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the noise. I didn't answer. The voice had started changing, speeding up, the words running together. It didn't sound human anymore. It reminded me of the time I'd recorded a conversation and played it back at double speed, except this was deeper, more distorted. Jordan finally got the battery pack out. The voice cut off mid-syllable, leaving an echo in my ears and a silence that felt heavy. "What the fuck was that?" Sierra whispered. I kept my eyes on our path. "Put the battery in your pack. Don't reconnect it." "But we don't need it," I said, cutting Jordan off. "We've got the vehicle radio if we need to contact base." Dr. Hamilton was watching me. I could feel her eyes. "You know what that was," she said. It wasn't a question. "No," I said, "but I know what it wasn't, and I know better than to find out more." "It's the second time communications equipment has failed," Denise said from beside me. "First our radio, now this one." "It didn't fail," I said. "It activated on its own. Different problem." Nick leaned forward from the back. "Is this related to the appearances we've been seeing?" I didn't answer right away. The Haglund crested a small rise, and I eased off the accelerator, letting gravity help pull us down the other side. The vehicle's tracks dug into the fresh snow, leaving deep parallel lines behind us. "Maybe," I finally said. "Wesley had a theory about radio signals out here." "Wesley Larson?" Hamilton asked. "Your mentor?" I nodded. "He thought malfunctioning electronics attracted attention." "Attention from what?" Sierra asked. He didn't know. Neither do I. I checked our heading on the GPS, still on course. But every time he reported equipment going haywire, something happened after. Something that shouldn't have been possible. Jordan was still holding the disconnected battery pack, turning it over in his hands. "So we just don't use radios?" "We use working ones," I said. "We don't use ones that turn themselves on or broadcast voices we can't understand." Nobody argued with that. The cabin fell silent except for the rumble of the engine and the occasional creak as the Haglund's tracks adjusted to the terrain. Bo had fallen asleep, his head resting against Nick's shoulder. Probably for the best. Kid needed the rest. "How much longer?" Hamilton asked after a while. I checked the GPS again. "About 20 kilometers. Hour and a half in these conditions." Denise nodded in agreement, her eyes on her own navigation equipment. "Weather's getting worse, but we'll make it before the full whiteout hits." "And then what?" Sierra asked. "We just pretend none of this happened." I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "No, we report everything, but we stick to facts. Dark patches in the ice, unexplained figures, radio malfunction." "And the fox?" Jordan asked. I hesitated. The fox was the hardest part to explain. It had helped Hamilton's team find shelter, led them to safety. That didn't fit with everything else we'd seen. "The fox, too," I said finally. The next hour passed without incident. I kept waiting for something to appear in our headlights. The woman in the yellow dress, the white-haired man, maybe even the fox. But there was nothing but snow and ice. The silence in the cabin wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't tense either. Everyone was lost in their own thoughts, processing what they'd experienced. I wasn't sure what I believed anymore. 2 years ago, when Wesley disappeared, I dismissed his stories about strange sightings and impossible phenomena. Figured the isolation had gotten to him. But now, I'd seen it all myself. The fox, the figures that couldn't be human, the moving patches in the ice, the radio broadcasting a language that made my skin crawl. The rules had kept us alive. Wesley's rules. Always travel in pairs. Maintain communication protocols. Respect weather forecasts. No equipment limits. Track location constantly. If something feels wrong, retreat immediately. Wesley had broken his own last rule. Gone out alone to chase a fox sighting. Never came back. I wouldn't make the same mistake. The outline of Halley 6 appeared on the horizon, its blue modules standing out against the white landscape. The sight of it loosened something in my chest I hadn't realized was tight. "There it is," I said, and felt the mood in the vehicle shift. Relief washed through the cabin. "Never thought I'd be so happy to see that ugly blue caterpillar," Nick said, and a few people chuckled. I radioed ahead to let them know we were coming in with all 4 missing researchers. Captain Chandler's voice came through, clear and professional, but radioed ahead to let them know we were coming in with all 4 missing researchers. Captain Chandler's voice came through, clear and professional, but I could hear the relief underneath it. "Medical team is standing by," he said. "Good work, Lopez." The last kilometer to the station felt longer than the entire journey. I kept scanning the perimeter, half expecting to see the woman in the yellow dress or the white-haired man watching us from the edge of visibility. But there was nothing but the growing outline of Halley 6 against the white horizon. When we finally pulled into the vehicle bay, a small crowd was waiting. 2 techs I didn't recognize, Dr. Charlotte Harris with her medical team, and Captain Chandler standing slightly apart from the others, arms crossed over his chest. "Stay seated," I said as I powered down the Hagland. "Let the medical team come to us." Dr. Harris approached before the engine had fully quieted, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in its usual practical bob. She'd been at Halley 6 for 3 seasons now, and I'd never once seen her flustered, no matter what came through those doors. "Who's priority?" she asked. "All business." "Bo Wilkins," I said, nodding toward the back seat. "Mild hypothermia, exhaustion, possible dehydration." She nodded and signaled to her team. They moved with practiced efficiency, helping Bo out first, then the others. I watched as they escorted Hamilton's team into the station, each researcher flanked by medical personnel. "You too," Dr. Harris said to me, Denise, and Jordan. "Standard protocol after exposure." I didn't argue. The 3 of us followed them in, passing through the airlock into the blessed warmth of the station. The sudden temperature change made my face tingle painfully as blood rushed back into my cheeks and nose. Captain Chandler caught my eye and nodded toward his office. "After medical," he said. "Yes, sir." The next few hours were a blur of medical checks, hot showers, and bland but filling food. Dr. Harris was thorough, examining each of us for frostbite, checking vital signs, asking about exposure symptoms. I answered her questions mechanically, my mind still out on the ice. "Your vitals are good," she said, making a note on her tablet. "But you've got that 1,000-yard stare I don't like." I blinked, focusing on her face. "Just tired." She gave me a look that said she wasn't buying it. "I've seen tired before. This is something else." She set down her tablet. "What happened out there, Bernard?" I hesitated. Dr. Harris wasn't just the station's doctor. She was the person who decided if you were mentally fit for duty. If I told her everything, would she pull me from rescue operations? But if I didn't, and someone else got hurt because they didn't know what to watch for? "We found them," I said finally. "They're alive. Mission accomplished." She studied me for a long moment, then sighed. "All right, I'm clearing you physically, but I want you to come see me if you start having trouble sleeping or if you feel off. Understood?" I nodded. "Understood." "Good. Captain Chandler's waiting for you in the command center." I found Chandler where she said he'd be, standing in front of the large topographical display of the surrounding area. He didn't turn when I entered, just kept staring at the map. "Sir," I said. "Lopez." He finally turned. "Sit down. Tell me everything." I sat in one of the swivel chairs near the display and tried to organize my thoughts. Where to start? The abandoned camp, the circular depression, the fox. From the beginning, Chandler said, as if reading my mind. Don't leave anything out. So I told him. All of it. The empty camp, the footprints leading into the circular depression and not coming out, the Rule 6 warning carved in the ice, the gray fox that both we and Hamilton's team had seen, the tall, white-haired figure watching from ridges, the woman in the yellow dress standing barefoot in -40 weather, the radio that activated itself and broadcast a language none of us recognized. Chandler listened without interrupting, his face unreadable. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. You did everything right, he said finally. You followed protocol. You retreated when necessary. You got everyone home alive. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The validation shouldn't have meant as much as it did. Wesley would be proud, he added. That hit me harder than I expected. I looked down at my hands. He broke his own rule, Rule 1, never travel alone. Yes, he did. Chandler turned back to the display. And you didn't. That's why you're sitting here and he's not. We were both quiet for a moment. Then Chandler sighed. I'm going to file this as a successful rescue with hazardous conditions, he said. The official report won't mention the unexplained elements, but I'm adding a confidential addendum with everything you've told me. Sir, this isn't the first time we've had reports like this, he said. Not just from Wesley, others too. Usually dismissed as stress, isolation, extreme conditions playing tricks on the mind. I thought about the woman in the sundress standing motionless and killing cold. It wasn't tricks. No, I don't think it was. He tapped something on the display, bringing up a different section of the map. 3 more research teams out there right now, all scheduled to check in within the next 2 weeks. I want you ready if any of them go silent. I nodded. I'll be ready. And I was. In the weeks that followed, I took part in 3 more rescue missions. Different circumstances, different researchers, but the same strange phenomena every time. The first mission was routine until we spotted the gray fox watching us from atop a pressure ridge. It kept pace with our vehicle for nearly 2 kilometers before vanishing behind a snowdrift. We found the researchers 30 minutes later, their equipment destroyed by what they described as moving shadows. The second mission went sideways when our drone disappeared into one of those dark patches in the ice. 1 minute, it was sending back clear images. The next, it was gone. The monitor showed nothing but midnight blue, then static. We found the research team huddled in their tent, refusing to come out until we arrived. They'd seen the white-haired man standing outside their camp every night for 3 days. The third mission was the worst. We had to evacuate a team after their camp was surrounded by those dark patches in the ice. They'd grown overnight, the researchers said, expanding from the size of dinner plates to the size of small ponds. On our way back, with all 4 researchers crammed into our vehicle, we saw the white-haired figure watching us from a distant ridge. He didn't move, didn't follow, just watched. Each time I followed the rules. We traveled in pairs or larger groups. We maintained communication when equipment worked. We respected weather forecasts, even when they changed suddenly. We knew our equipment limits and never pushed beyond them. We tracked our location constantly, and when something felt wrong, we retreated immediately. The rules kept us alive, but they didn't explain what was happening out there on the ice. Nothing could explain that. I didn't want to go back out there, not after everything we'd seen over the past month. But that's the thing about Antarctica. It doesn't care what you want. Captain Chandler called me into his office 3 days after our last rescue. I figured it was for a debrief, maybe some paperwork I'd missed. Instead, he had a new mission. Final retrieval of the season, he said, tapping his tablet screen. Climate research equipment at the Henderson outpost. Expensive stuff. Can't leave it out there for winter. I nodded, waiting for the rest. There's always more. Weather's turning faster than expected. Forecast gives you a 12-hour window, then it's shutting down for at least 3 days. When do we leave? I asked. 2 hours. Denise is prepping the vehicle now. Jordan's on communications again. Same team. That was good. We'd developed a rhythm after 4 missions together. They knew the rules now, respected them. Any researchers to extract? I asked. Chandler shook his head. Equipment only, automated station, no personnel. That was something at least. Equipment doesn't panic when things get weird. Equipment doesn't wander off following foxes or strange figures. Henderson Outpost, I repeated. That's the old British hut from the 90s, right? Eastern Quadrant? Good memory, Chandler said. About 60 kilometers out. Should be straightforward, in and out. Nothing out here is straightforward. We both knew that, but neither of us said it. I'll gear up, I said, standing. Chandler stopped me at the door. Bernard, standard protocols apply. That was our code now. Standard protocols, Wesley's rules, plus everything else we'd learned. Travel in pairs, maintain communication, respect the weather, no equipment limits, track location, retreat if something feels wrong. Always, I said. 2 hours later, we were loading the last of our gear into the Hagland. Denise was running through her pre-trip checklist, methodical as always. Jordan was testing the radio equipment, though we all knew how unreliable it could be out there. All frequencies clear, Jordan said, though his expression told me he knew that could change in an instant. Navigation systems calibrated, Denise reported. I've plotted 3 potential return routes depending on how the weather shifts. I nodded, appreciating their thoroughness. We'd gotten good at this, preparing for the unexpected. As good as anyone could be, anyway. The vehicle bay doors opened, revealing the vast white landscape beyond. The sky was clear for now, that peculiar Antarctic blue that seems deeper than any sky has a right to be. But I could see the faint smudge of clouds on the horizon. The coming storm. 12-hour window, I reminded them as we climbed into the Hagland. We'll need 4 hours there, 2 hours for equipment retrieval, 4 hours back. That leaves us 2 hours of buffer. Not much room for error, Denise said from the passenger seat. Then we don't make errors, I replied, starting the engine. The Hagland rumbled to life, its treads already crunching on the packed snow just outside the bay. I took one last look at Halley 6 behind us, the blue modules raised on hydraulic legs, safe and warm and normal. Then I shifted into drive, and we headed out into the white. The first hour passed without incident. Just the endless expanse of ice and snow, broken occasionally by pressure ridges or sastrugi, those wind-carved ripples that make the landscape look like a frozen ocean. Jordan kept up a steady stream of check-ins with base, confirming our position every 15 minutes. How many of these missions have you done now, Bernard? Jordan asked during a quiet stretch. Including the 4 with you? 9 total. And how many? He hesitated. How many times have you seen something out there? I kept my eyes on the terrain ahead. Every time, different things, but always something. Denise turned from her navigation screen. You think we'll see something today? Hope not, I said. But probably. We fell silent after that. The Hagland's heater hummed, keeping us warm against the -30 outside. Through the windshield, I could see the storm front advancing faster than predicted. The smudge on the horizon was now a definite line of dark clouds. Weather systems accelerating, Denise noted, checking her tablet. Our window might be closer to 10 hours than 12. I did the math in my head. Still doable, but we don't linger at the outpost. Jordan leaned forward between our seats. What kind of equipment are we retrieving anyway? Atmospheric monitors, ice core sampling tools, data storage units, I said. About 4 cases worth, according to the manifest. Expensive stuff, Jordan said. More than our annual salaries combined, I confirmed. Hence the rush job before winter lockdown. Another hour passed. The Henderson outpost appeared on the horizon, a small dark rectangle against the white. Not much to look at, just a prefabricated hut on stilts, built to withstand Antarctic conditions, but nothing fancy. As we got closer, I felt that familiar unease settling in my stomach. Nothing specific, just the feeling of being watched. I scanned the horizon, checking for movement, for foxes or figures or anything else that shouldn't be there. Nothing but snow and the approaching storm. See anything? Denise asked quietly. Not yet, I said. Let's keep it that way. We pulled up to the outpost, parking the Hagland directly beneath the short stairway that led to the elevated entrance. Standard design, kept the doorway above snow accumulation levels. Jordan, you stay with the vehicle, I said. Keep the engine running. Denise, you're with me. We suited up, checking each other's seals and equipment before stepping out into the cold. The wind had picked up, driving fine crystals of snow that stung any exposed skin. I pulled my goggles down and led the way up the metal stairs to the outpost door. The keypad still worked, accepting the entry code Chandler had given us. The door swung open with a groan of cold hinges, revealing darkness inside. Power's out, I noted, switching on my headlamp. Denise did the same. The interior was simple. One main room with basic furnishings, a small kitchenette, monitoring equipment along one wall, and storage cabinets. A layer of frost covered everything, glittering in our headlamp beams. "Equipment should be in the storage lockers," I said, pointing to the far wall. We moved through the space carefully. Our breath clouded in front of us, the temperature inside barely warmer than outside. The place had been closed up properly at least. No signs of damage or hurried evacuation. Denise found the equipment cases first, stacked neatly in a storage locker. 4 cases, just like the manifest said. I nodded, relieved at the simplicity of it. "Let's get them to the vehicle." We each grabbed a case, awkward in our bulky gloves but manageable. Back outside, the wind had intensified further, now driving horizontal sheets of snow. Visibility had dropped to maybe 50 meters. "Weather's deteriorating fast," I called to Jordan as we loaded the first 2 cases. He nodded, eyes on the storm front. "Base just radioed. They're revising the forecast again. Windows down to 8 hours now." I swore under my breath. "Let's hustle." Denise and I returned to the outpost for the remaining cases. As I reached for the 3rd case, my headlamp beam caught something unexpected. A small leather-bound book wedged between the case and the wall. "What's that?" Denise asked, noticing my hesitation. I picked it up, brushing off a thin layer of frost. The cover was unmarked, but when I opened to the first page, my heart skipped. "Property of Wesley Larson," I read aloud, recognizing my mentor's neat handwriting immediately. "Your missing mentor?" Denise asked, her voice quiet. I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Wesley had disappeared 2 years ago, his body never found, and now somehow his journal was here, in an outpost he'd never been assigned to. "We need to take this," I said, tucking the journal into my inner pocket. "And we need to move faster." We grabbed the last 2 cases and hurried back to the Hagland. The wind was howling now, visibility dropping by the minute. "That's everything," I told Jordan as we secured the cases. "Let's get out of here." But as I moved toward the driver's seat, Jordan pointed at his console. "Base is trying to reach us. Signal's breaking up." I leaned over, adjusting the radio. Captain Chandler's voice came through in fragments. "Storm front accelerating. Return window compromised. Advise immediate." Then nothing but static. "We lost them," Jordan said, fiddling with the dials. Denise was already checking her weather radar. "This isn't good. The system's moved much faster than predicted. We've got maybe 20 minutes before full whiteout conditions." I did some quick calculations. 4 hours back to base, no visibility, rapidly dropping temperatures. "We can't risk it," I decided. "We'd be driving blind." "So, we're staying here?" Jordan asked, glancing nervously at the outpost. I nodded. "Until the storm passes or we get a clear window. Protocol says we shelter in place." Neither of them argued. They'd seen enough by now to know the rules existed for a reason. We gathered our emergency packs from the Hagland and made our way back to the outpost, fighting against the wind that seemed determined to push us away from shelter. Inside, Denise immediately set up our portable heater while Jordan established a perimeter of motion sensors around the hut's exterior. I secured the door, then helped set up our emergency lighting. The outpost took on an eerie glow from our battery-powered lamps, shadows dancing in the corners as we moved around. "Radio's still working," Jordan reported. "But I can't raise base. Too much atmospheric interference." "Keep trying every 30 minutes, I instructed. "They'll be monitoring for us." With our immediate needs addressed, we settled in to wait out the storm. Outside, the wind screamed around the corners of the outpost, occasionally rocking the entire structure despite its reinforced frame. "How long do these storms usually last?" Denise asked, checking her tablet again. "Hard to say. The forecast suggested 3 days, but..." I gestured toward the window where snow was now completely obscuring the view. Forecasts haven't been too reliable lately. We ate a sparse meal from our emergency rations, conserving supplies in case we needed to stay longer. The whole time I was acutely aware of Wesley's journal pressing against my chest in my inner pocket. I wanted to read it immediately, but something held me back. Some instinct told me I should wait until the others were occupied. My opportunity came when Jordan announced he needed to check the Hagland, and Denise offered to help. I insisted one of them stay inside per protocol, so Denise remained while Jordan went out, tethered to the doorway by a safety line. While Denise was busy recalibrating her navigation equipment, I moved to the far corner of the outpost and finally pulled out the journal. The leather was cracked from cold, but the pages inside were intact. Wesley's neat, compact handwriting filled each page. I flipped through quickly, noting dates and locations. The most recent entry was from 2 weeks before his disappearance. I turned back to the beginning and started reading properly. The first entries were standard field notes, weather conditions, equipment status, mission parameters. Nothing unusual. But about a quarter of the way through, the tone changed. "Saw it again today," Wesley had written. "The fox, silver gray against the snow, watching me, always at the edge of visibility, always gone when approached. No fox species should exist here, no terrestrial mammals native to Antarctica at all, yet I've seen it 7 times now." My skin prickled. Wesley had been seeing the same fox years before any of us reported it. I flipped forward, scanning entries. Dark patches in the ice today. Like holes, but not holes. The ice is still there, just different. They move when not directly observed. The others don't see them, or won't admit they do. Figure on the ridge again, tall, white hair, no proper gear. Impossible to survive in these conditions. Yet there it stands, watching. Radio malfunction again, 3rd time this month, always preceded by sightings. Each entry confirmed what we'd been experiencing. Wesley had seen it all before us, but he'd kept it to himself, at least officially. Why hadn't he told anyone? Then I found something new, a page titled simply, "The Rules." He'd listed his 6 rules, the ones he'd taught me, but there was a 7th I'd never heard before. Rule 7. If you hear your own voice calling from the ice, run in the opposite direction. It is not you. I read it again, a chill running through me that had nothing to do with the temperature. The last entry was different from the others. Hastily written, the handwriting less controlled. They're getting closer. The boundaries are thinning. Whatever exists out there wants in, or wants us out there. I need to know. God help me. I need to understand. Tomorrow I follow the fox alone, against all my own rules. If I don't return, whoever finds this, trust the rules. They're all we have. I closed the journal, my hands shaking slightly. Wesley had broken his own first rule. Never travel alone. He'd followed the fox just as others had done since, and he'd never returned. "Everything okay?" Denise asked, noticing my expression. I quickly tucked the journal away. "Fine, just thinking about our situation." Jordan returned from checking the Hagland, stomping snow from his boots. Vehicles secure but completely buried on one side. This storm is something else. Night fell, though it was hard to tell with the constant howl of the wind and the swirling snow that blocked all light from outside. We set up our sleeping bags in a circle around the heater, establishing a watch rotation. Me first, then Denise, then Jordan. "Wake me if anything changes," I told Denise as she settled into her sleeping bag. "Anything at all." She nodded, understanding what I meant. Not just the weather, anything. Jordan fell asleep almost immediately, his soft snoring barely audible over the storm. Denise took longer, but eventually her breathing steadied too. I sat with my back against the wall, Wesley's journal open in my lap under the dim light of my headlamp. I read through it again more carefully, looking for anything that might help us understand what was happening out here. The wind outside changed pitch occasionally, sometimes dropping to an eerie moan before rising back to a scream. I checked my watch, just past midnight. My shift would end in 2 hours. That's when I heard it. At first, I thought it was just another change in the wind, but then it came again, clearer this time. "Bernard." My name, called from outside. A voice that sounded exactly like my own. "Bernard, help me." I froze, Wesley's 7th rule burning in my mind. If you hear your own voice calling from the ice, run in the opposite direction. It is not you. "Bernard, please, I'm injured." The voice was perfect, my exact tone, my exact cadence. If I hadn't read Wesley's warning, I might have believed it was somehow me out there, impossible as that was. I stood slowly, careful not to wake the others. Moving to the window, I tried to see outside, but the snow was too thick, the darkness too complete. "Bernard, I can see the light. Let me in." The voice was closer now, just outside the door. I backed away, heart pounding. "Bernard, are you there? I'm freezing." My hand moved toward the door handle almost involuntarily. Some deep instinct wanting to help. to respond to the call of my own voice. "Who's there?" Denise's voice startled me. She was sitting up in her sleeping bag, fully alert. I put my finger to my lips, motioning for silence. She nodded, reaching slowly for her knife. "Bernard, open the door." The voice was harder now, less pleading. Jordan stirred, blinking awake. Before he could speak, I shook my head sharply, pointing to the door. He understood immediately, reaching for his own knife. "Bernard!" The voice was angry now, the door handle rattling violently. We all remained absolutely still, weapons ready, eyes fixed on the door. The rattling continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Then, abruptly, it stopped. Silence fell, broken only by our breathing and the constant howl of the wind. "What the hell was that?" Jordan whispered finally. Instead of answering, I pulled out Wesley's journal and showed them the 7th rule. "If you hear your own voice calling from the ice, run in the opposite direction. It is not you," Denise read aloud, her voice barely audible. Did that sound like you?" Jordan asked me. I nodded. Exactly like me. We maintained our watch through the night, all three of us awake now, backs to each other, facing outward toward the walls of the outpost. The voice didn't return, but occasionally we heard scratching against the outer walls like something circling the structure. None of us spoke. There was nothing to say. Dawn brought no real light, just a slight lessening of the darkness outside. The storm continued unabated, snow piling higher around the outpost. "I'm going to check outside," I said finally, breaking our hours-long silence. "That's not a good idea," Jordan said immediately. "We need to know what we're dealing with," I countered. "I'll stay tethered to the door, 5 meters maximum." Denise looked unhappy but nodded. "I'll anchor you." I suited up, checking every seal twice. Jordan handed me a flare gun, not much use as a weapon, but better than nothing. 5 meters, he reminded me. "No further." I nodded, securing the tether to my belt. Denise took the other end, wrapping it around her arm and bracing herself against the wall. "Ready?" I asked. They both nodded, tension evident in their postures. I opened the door. The wind immediately tried to tear it from my grasp, driving snow into the outpost. I pushed against it, stepping out onto the small landing at the top of the stairs. Visibility was maybe 2 meters. The Hagland was completely buried, only its radio antenna visible above the snow. I scanned what little I could see, looking for any sign of movement, any sign of whatever had been outside our door last night. That's when I saw them. Footprints. My footprints, or rather, prints that matched my boots exactly. They circled the outpost completely, a perfect ring in the snow. But they didn't lead away. They simply stopped, as if whatever made them had vanished mid-step. I followed the tether back inside, securing the door behind me. "Well?" Denise asked. "Footprints," I said, matching my boots, circling the entire outpost. Jordan swallowed hard. "How is that possible? The snow was falling all night. Any tracks should have been covered." I had no answer for him. We spent another full day in the outpost, the storm showing no signs of abating. We rationed our supplies, kept the heater on its lowest setting to conserve fuel, and took turns watching the door. The voice didn't return. Neither did the scratching, but none of us relaxed. On the morning of the 3rd day, the storm finally began to ease, wind dropping, visibility improving. By noon, we could see clear to the horizon. "Base is hailing us," Jordan reported suddenly, the radio crackling to life. "They've been trying to reach us for 2 days. I took the handset. Alley 66, this is Lopez. We're at Henderson Outpost with equipment, all team members accounted for, requesting weather update." Captain Chandler's voice came through clearly. "Bernard, good to hear your voice. Weather system is passing. You have a 36-hour window before the next front arrives. Can you make it back?" I looked at Denise, who nodded. "Affirmative. We'll depart immediately." We packed quickly, eager to leave the outpost behind. The Hagland required some digging out, but its engine started on the first try. As we pulled away, I looked back at the outpost one last time. For just a moment, I thought I saw a figure in the window, a figure with my face watching us leave. Then it was gone, if it had ever been there at all. The journey back to Alley 6 was tense but uneventful. No fox, no white-haired figure, no dark patches in the ice, just the endless white landscape and the distant base growing larger as we approached. Captain Chandler met us in the vehicle bay, relief evident on his face. "Was beginning to think we'd lost you too," Nearly did, I replied, helping unload the equipment cases. But we had the rules. After the equipment was secured and Denise and Jordan had gone for medical checks, I followed Chandler to his office. Without a word, I placed Wesley's journal on his desk. "Where did you find this?" he asked, immediately recognizing what it was. "Henderson Outpost, hidden behind some equipment." Chandler opened it carefully, turning to the page with the rules. His finger stopped at the 7th one. "We suspected there were more," he said quietly. "Things Wesley never officially reported, things he only told his closest team members." "Did you know?" I asked. "About the voice?" Chandler shook his head. "Not specifically, but there have been reports, similar experiences, different details but the same impossible nature." "What are we dealing with out there?" I asked. He closed the journal. "I don't know, Bernard. No one does. But the rules, they work. They keep us alive. And now we have one more." I nodded, understanding what he wasn't saying. Whatever was out there, whatever Wesley had discovered, whatever had taken him, it wasn't something we could fight or understand. We could only avoid it, follow the rules, retreat when something feels wrong. "No more missions this season," Chandler said. "Winter lockdown starts tomorrow. But next season, I'll be ready," I said. I left his office and headed to my quarters, exhaustion finally catching up with me. Antarctica would be here waiting when the sun returned, and so would its mysteries. But now we had 7 rules instead of 6. A small advantage, bought with Wesley's life. I intended to honor that sacrifice by staying alive. I couldn't sleep. Not that I ever slept well at Halley 6, but tonight was different. My last night. Tomorrow I'd be on a transport back to civilization. Real food, real darkness, real quiet without the constant hum of environmental systems. I sat alone in the common room, the glow of my laptop screen the only light besides the dim emergency strips along the baseboards. It was 2:30 in the morning, but time didn't mean much here during winter lockdown. The sun hadn't risen in months. The document on my screen had grown to 37 pages. I'd been working on it for weeks, adding notes after each mission, cross-referencing with Wesley's journal. The title at the top read, "Antarctic Field Operations, Enhanced Survival Protocols." I scrolled back through the section I'd just finished writing. Rule 7. If you hear your own voice calling from the ice, run in the opposite direction. It is not you. I'd added my own observations beneath Wesley's rule. The voice will become increasingly convincing, then hostile when ignored. It may attempt to manipulate team members by mimicking distress. Under no circumstances should anyone respond or investigate without full team awareness and preparation. I rubbed my eyes. They felt gritty from staring at the screen too long. The coffee beside me had gone cold hours ago. I should have been packing or sleeping or doing anything besides this, but I couldn't stop. Someone needed to document everything we'd learned, everything I'd seen. The common room door slid open with a soft hiss. I glanced up to see Captain Chandler standing there, still in his uniform despite the hour. He looked tired, more than usual. "Thought I might find you here," he said, stepping inside. "Mind if I join you?" I closed the laptop halfway, not hiding it exactly, but a reflex. "Go ahead." He lowered himself into the chair across from me, the vinyl cushion sighing under his weight. He had a folder tucked under his arm, which he placed on the table between us. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Not really." "Me neither." He nodded toward my laptop. "Working on something important?" I hesitated, then opened the screen again. "Just compiling everything. All the protocols. Figured someone should have it all in one place." Chandler nodded slowly. "Good thinking. That's actually why I wanted to talk to you." I waited, watching as he seemed to gather his thoughts. His fingers drummed once on the folder. "We found Wesley," he said finally. My brain took a second to process the words. "What? Where?" 3 days ago. Search team was mapping new crevasse formations about 20 kilometers from where you found the circular depression. He was just there, in the ice. I felt a cold that had nothing to do with the station's temperature. Dead? Yes. Chandler's voice was gentle, but not how you might think. No injuries, no signs of struggle. He was just frozen, standing upright, eyes open, peaceful expression on his face. I tried to imagine it. Wesley, standing somewhere out there on the ice, just stopping, freezing in place, waiting for death to take him. It didn't make sense. How long had he been there? I asked. Hard to tell exactly. The preservation in these conditions. Chandler shook his head. But based on his last known whereabouts and the depth of ice accumulation, medical team estimates it matches the timeline of his disappearance. 2 years. Wesley had been out there for 2 years, standing in the ice while we searched and eventually gave up. Did you find anything with him? Notes? Equipment? I was thinking about his journal, wondering if there had been more. Nothing useful. Standard gear, all intact. No additional writings beyond what you already found in his journal. Chandler paused. Bernard. He was smiling. That hit me hard. I pictured Wesley's face, the stern expressions during training, rare smiles when someone got something right. The idea of him smiling while freezing to death didn't fit. The fox, I said quietly. He wrote that he was going to follow it. Chandler nodded. That's what we think happened. He followed it somewhere, saw something, and then just stopped. We sat in silence for a moment. I thought about all our missions these past weeks. The dark patches in the ice, the white-haired man watching from ridges, the woman in the yellow dress, my own voice calling from outside the Henderson outpost. Did you tell the others? I asked. Not yet, just you and medical team. I wanted to talk to you first. Chandler tapped the folder again, which brings me to this. He slid it across the table. I opened it to find Official Antarctic Research Division letterhead, a personnel document with my name at the top. What's this? I asked, skimming the first paragraph. Promotion. Lead instructor position in the Antarctic Rescue Division. Based in Christchurch most of the year, you'd be responsible for training new teams on survival protocols. I looked up from the paper. You want me to teach Wesley's rules. And yours, Chandler said, nodding toward my laptop. The expanded protocols. What you've learned. I sat back, turning the idea over in my mind, teaching others how to survive out there, how to recognize when something was wrong, when to retreat. Why me? Because you listened, Chandler said simply. You followed the rules when it mattered. You got your teams back alive, and now you've seen enough to understand why the protocols exist. I thought about the other teams out there. Researchers who'd never believe until they saw something impossible standing on the ice. Rescue teams who might think the rules were just superstition. The position starts next month, Chandler continued. You'd finish your rotation tomorrow as planned, take standard decompression leave, then report to the Christchurch facility. What about the things we've seen? I asked. The official reports? Chandler's mouth tightened slightly. Officially, they don't exist. You know that. But unofficially, he gestured toward my laptop. That's why your training will matter. You'll find ways to make them understand without saying it directly. I nodded slowly. I'd gotten good at that already, telling researchers to respect the protocols without explaining exactly what might happen if they didn't. I'll need to think about it, I said. Of course. Chandler stood up. Let me know before your transport leaves tomorrow. The division needs people like you, Bernard. People who've seen what's out there and lived to tell about it. He headed for the door, then paused. One more thing. Medical wants to keep Wesley's body for examination, but I'm overriding them. He's being sent back to his family. Whatever happened to him out there, they deserve to say goodbye. After Chandler left, I sat staring at the promotion paperwork for a long time. Lead instructor. Teaching others how to survive Antarctica's impossible dangers, the ones that weren't in any official manual. I turned back to my laptop and added a new section. Final notes on implementation. These protocols may seem excessive or based in superstition to new personnel. Resistance is expected. Effective training requires establishing the life-saving value of these rules without revealing their full context. Remember, those who have encountered the phenomena understand. Those who haven't need protection through procedure rather than explanation. I closed the document and saved it to my external drive. Tomorrow I'd be leaving this place. The endless white, the constant mechanical hum, the knowledge that something was out there, watching and waiting. But I wouldn't really be leaving it behind. Not completely. Not if I took the job. Morning came too quickly. I'd managed maybe 3 hours of sleep before my alarm dragged me back to consciousness. My quarters were already half-packed, most of my personal items stored in the standard issue duffel provided for transport. I didn't have much. Nobody did out here. I showered, dressed, and finished packing mechanically. My mind was still working through Chandler's offer. Lead instructor, teaching others how to stay alive out here by following rules they wouldn't understand until it was too late. The folder with the promotion paperwork sat on my desk. I hadn't signed it yet. In the mess hall, I found most of the station personnel gathered for breakfast. Standard rotation day tradition. Everyone comes to see off the departing crew. I grabbed coffee and joined Denise and Jordan at their table. "Ready to rejoin civilization?" Denise asked, pushing a plate of reconstituted eggs toward me. "I guess." I took a sip of coffee. "Feels strange, leaving." Jordan nodded. "First rotation's the hardest. Coming and going. You get used to it." I looked at him. "You planning to come back next season?" "Hell yes," he said without hesitation. "Already signed on. Denise too." I glanced at Denise, who shrugged. "What can I say? The place grows on you." I thought about the ice, the vast emptiness, the things we'd seen out there that shouldn't exist. Yeah, it grew on you all right, like a fungus or an obsession. "What about you?" Jordan asked. "Coming back?" Before I could answer, Chandler's voice came over the station intercom. "Transport arrival in 30 minutes. Departing personnel, complete final preparations, and report to airlock for boarding. 30 minutes. I still hadn't decided about the promotion. I should finish up, I said, standing with my coffee still half full. "See you at the airlock?" Jordan nodded. "We'll be there." Back in my quarters, I stared at the promotion folder. Lead instructor, teaching others to survive what they couldn't understand. I picked up a pen, hesitated, then signed my name on the line. Chandler was right. Someone needed to pass this knowledge on. Someone who'd seen it firsthand. I tucked the folder into my duffel and took one last look around the small room that had been home for the past 8 months. Nothing left of me here. Nothing to show I'd ever existed in this space except maybe some worn spots on the thin mattress. At the airlock, most of the station had gathered to see off our rotation group, 7 of us heading back to New Zealand. Handshakes, backslaps, the usual jokes about real food and real sunshine. I spotted Chandler standing slightly apart from the group and made my way over. "I signed it," I said, pulling the folder from my bag. He took it with a nod. "You're making the right choice, Bernard." "Hope so." I glanced toward the outer door. "Any word on the next set of researchers? The ones heading to the Eastern Quadrant?" "Already briefed them on the protocols. Your protocols." A hint of a smile touched his face. "Told them they came directly from our most experienced field operator." That felt strange. My additions to Wesley's rules being passed on, becoming official in their own way. I wondered if someday someone would find my frozen body out there too, standing and smiling at something no one else could see. "Transport's ready," Chandler said, extending his hand. "Good luck, Instructor Lopez." The title felt odd, wrong, almost. I wasn't sure I'd ever get used to it. "Thanks, Captain." We shook hands. "For everything." The walk to the transport plane was short but brutal. -50 with the wind chill, the cold slicing through my gear despite the heavy-duty parka. The plane sat on the ice runway, engines already running, the pilot watching our approach through frosted windows. 7 of us filed up the metal stairs and into the cramped interior, finding seats along the wall. No one talked much as we strapped in. End-of-rotation exhaustion had hit us all. 8 months in this place drained you, hollowed you out. Most would sleep the entire flight to New Zealand. The engines roared louder. I felt the vibration through the metal floor as we began to move, gaining speed across the ice. Then the sudden lightness as we lifted off, the pressure pushing me back against my seat. I leaned toward the small window, watching as Halley 6 shrank beneath us, the blue modules on hydraulic legs growing smaller until they were just a speck of human presence in the vast white nothing. That's when I saw it. A small gray shape moving across the ice, tracking our plane's shadow. The silver-gray fox, its movement purposeful, deliberate, following us. I blinked, certain I was imagining it. We were too high already, too far away to see something so small. But there it was. And behind it, much farther back but unmistakable against the white backdrop, a tall figure with straight white hair, standing, watching. My stomach tightened. I looked away from the window, following my own rule. Rule 6. If something feels wrong, retreat immediately. I closed my eyes and leaned back in my seat, focusing on the plane's vibrations, the hum of the engines. We were leaving, getting away. That's what mattered. When I looked out the window again minutes later, There was nothing below but unbroken white. The fox was gone. The figure too. Just Antarctica stretching endlessly in all directions. I thought about Wesley out there, frozen with a smile on his face, about the researchers we'd rescued, about the others who would come after them, drawn to this place by scientific curiosity or professional obligation or simple human stubbornness. They'd need the rules. My rules now, I supposed. The protocols I'd be teaching them in Christchurch, trying to make them understand without saying directly what was out there, what waited on the ice. I reached into my bag and pulled out the external drive containing my document. 37 pages of hard-earned wisdom, not superstition, survival, written in the blood and experience of those who came before. I held it tightly as the plane carried us north, away from the white, away from the watching things. For now.